Hello and welcome into episode 53 of the Stomp the Bus show. I am your host, Mark Harris, coming at you after an ASU victory over Southern Utah. Weird victory, memorable game, but ASU is 1-0. Colton, how's it going, my man?
I'm doing well, Mark. Very strange game, but before I get into that, before this show, I was a little late because I was working on one of my greatest immaculate grid runs. Um, and this has an ASU connection, I promise.
I would hope
But
so.
one of the squares on this grid was Super Bowl champ on the top, and then on the left side, I had Los Angeles Rams. Okay. And I've never been one to chase rarity scores. I just want to be,
Okay,
get the 9 for 9.
put it out there.
And for LA and Super Bowl champs, I put Kareem Orr,
Okay, right.
who won a Super Bowl with the Los Angeles Rams. And the only reason I remembered that was because I turned on that Monday night game where the Rams had like nobody left in their secondary against the Cardinals, and Kareem Orr was playing in that game. And I remember covering Kareem Orr and thinking
Yep.
there's no chance we ever see this guy play football again. And then that moment being like, whoa, that's Kareem Orr. And then the percentage, this is what really jumped out. The percentage of people who guessed Kareem Orr was 0.005. It
Yeah.
was 0.004 when I put it in.
So you're
So
like one of five people
I'm
to get that.
almost certain I was the fifth person out of every single person who has guessed correctly on that square to use Kareem Orr. So shout out to the other four people who knew that. But I was just blown away by that. The rarity score was 57 on this one.
Dude,
Um,
I'm on Kareem Moore's Wikipedia page right now. There is no mention of Arizona State because he transferred to Chattanooga, and
that's right.
that's
I
where it
forgot
says.
about that.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah,
Because
man.
I remember he had a really good year. I think it was his freshman year or his sophomore year that he had like 6 picks or 5 picks or something. Um,
Yeah, him and who else played in that secondary with him?
Okay, yeah, freshman. I'm not. I don't even know. But freshman 2015 consensus freshman All American set the ASU school freshman record with 6 interceptions.
Jeez.
It,
Was that
uh,
a was he on was he in a secondary with Gump Hayes,
Gump.
the man
I
who
don't.
picked off Patrick
I think
Mahomes?
Gump might have been 2016,
Okay.
but that
Yeah.
dude, that is really impressive actually to get Kareem Moore. Like,
No,
and the
that's
fact
it.
that it even counted, like.
No, I
Because
didn't think it would. I wasn't sure it would, but I'm like they had to have given him a Super Bowl ring. So he
Right.
has to be recognized as a Super Bowl champion. And yeah, sure enough, he is. Kareem Orr is a Super Bowl champion.
Yeah, important
So there
stuff.
you go.
To everyone listening, this was not us just stalling to
No,
talk about what
sometimes,
happened
man,
on.
like otherworldly things like that happen, and if there's an ASU connection, it would be a disservice to the listener base to not dive in.
That's true. You know what? That just shows you how big of ASU sickos we really are. The fact that we know Kareem Orr played for the Rams and won a Super Bowl, like
Yeah,
somehow,
and
and remembered that he
Layu
went to ASU.
Mokiola, Layu Mokiola, and Deshaun Gump Hayes can both say that they have picked off Patrick Mahomes.
That's right. That
So there
game.
you go.
Wild. There you go. Well, Patrick Mahomes was not in attendance in ASU's season opening win. Like that segue.
There it
Uh,
is. There it
in,
is.
in ASU's season opening win over Southern Utah last Thursday. It was an ugly win. Now, there's, weird circumstances around it because literally just before halftime, like probably like 2 or 3 plays, honestly, before halftime,
Yeah.
a Haboob literally rolls into the stadium. You could tell, like it was literally you're just sitting there, and then the next second, boom, it's like, oh, where's all this dust? And so yeah, Haboob literally rolls into the stadium. Thankfully, they were able to finish the first half. Then at halftime, we didn't really know what was going to happen. And then right at the end of halftime, it's like, oh, this game is being delayed with lightning, and then it gets delayed like 2.5 hours more. ASU plays really badly in the second half, and ASU does eventually find a way to win 24-21 over FCS Southern Utah. So much to get into. I think, it's the old sports writer cliche. This was a game of two halves, but it really was and
Well,
obviously,
there was a game in between the two halves, essentially, the
yeah,
length of a game.
yeah, totally. And so it was a weird experience. People woke up the next morning being like, "Oh, that was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be." Colton, you weren't at the game. I assumed you watched the first half, and you probably didn't
Yeah.
watch the second half. Why?
Right. So my
Yeah.
experience, you were one of the you used the term sickos earlier, and that's very, very accurate for what the state that you were in at that game, right? And should not only going to the game, but then sticking out this delay because you were there the whole
Yeah.
time, weren't you?
I was. Me,
Okay.
Tonis, and Connor were.
So that is a textbook definition of ASU sickos.
Yeah.
So shout out to you guys. I, however, was at home on my couch streaming the game, and very comfortable. And as the Haboob or whatever thunderstorm rolled in, I
was both.
was mildly inconvenienced, and then I went to bed. So that was my viewer experience. But I was one of those people who woke up the next morning, saw the final notification, saw that the notification of the final score came through at 1 a.m. And
Yep.
I thought, okay, they actually finished the game. I just assumed that I didn't know what they would have done. You don't really like postpone a game with travel and everything. Like, it didn't make sense logistically.
It felt like being in the stadium, like after the first hour, hour and a half, I was like, okay, they're just going to cancel this game. This is an FCS team. ASU already has a bowl ban, right? So even if it does get counted as a no contest or something, it ultimately wouldn't affect the season in any way. But anyway, keep going.
No, I completely agree, and that's why I was so shocked that they actually ended up finishing this game. And then I went through the day and like figured out more details or whatever, and the delay was what 2.5 hours of waiting this out and then coming back out. So my biggest thing with that is, I don't want to say throw away the second half, but it's almost like you can't look at this as just ASU beat Southern Utah by 3 points in a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's very obvious that like this loss would have looked terrible, and they escaped. They did what they needed to do to hold on to this win with the
Imagine the Pac-12 has the same great weekend it had, but
and
instead of being
ASU's the
12 and
only
0,
loss.
it would be, oh, the Pac-12 went 11-1. It's time for ASU losing to an FCS team.
After a
Came
2.5 hour thunderstorm
Yeah.
delay. Yeah. So I mean, all that I'm really going to look at and take seriously in terms of numbers and everything else from this game is kind of what I saw in the first half. The second half is just survival. Like,
yeah, so
you can't analyze what happened in that second half.
Yeah, so I think that's a good way of putting it. And I don't totally agree with you, but I'll get into it later. But let's get into since you just saw the first half, right?
Yeah.
What did you like from the first half? What did you not like? ASU goes up 21-7 at the end of the half. What were your impressions on the first half? Let's just isolate the first half, and then we can move on to the second half.
First impression was Jaden Rashada's deep ball was beautiful. I think he threw 2 or 3. He had the 1-2, obviously the big 1-2.
Guillory.
Guillory, and then the one to the 33-yarder, his third pass of the game to
Stovall. Yeah. The
Stovall, right.
Colorado State transfer. Yep.
Right. So those two stood out to me. The Conyers play was more run after catch. That one wasn't so much Rashada's deep ball, but the
Right.
touch that he had on those passes, and watching both of those back, I think he did get a roughing on the first one, the pass to Stovall. He took a shot at the end of that play. And I'm almost certain he was under pressure. Maybe not on the fourth down play. But there was one other play I remember seeing where he was under pressure, the defender in his face, and he delivered an accurate ball.
Yeah.
So that's what impressed me the most, standing out that stood out at first, was Rashada's touch on that deep ball, because we've talked a ton about the playmakers at the skill positions who can kind of take the top off of the defense, and then the guys who can work that intermediate zone. And if Rashada's putting got some touch on those deep balls, then it's going to open up a lot for this offense. And I saw a lot of that in the game. He started four straight completions out of the gate. Again, FCS opponent. I get it. But that looks solid. I mean, also the poise that he showed on that touchdown going into the half, when the dust storm first rolled in, everybody's like, what is going on here?
Dude.
You couldn't see anything. There's 5 seconds left in the
That
half.
play has not been getting talked about much.
No,
That play
there's
was
5 seconds in the
nice.
half.
Dude, that
He
was a
steps up and throws that fade to
yeah.
Omieri.
And
And
and Omieri did a great job catching it too. I think it was
right,
on catch,
great
but
throw, great catch. And given the circumstances, it's easy to get like disjointed on that and think like, hey, what's going on here? Is this going to
right.
get delayed? But the poise that he showed on his birthday, no less, man.
That's right.
So going into the half, 12 of 16 with 2 touchdown passes, even after the shakier second half, right? He still finished with a 143 quarterback rating, which is pretty much near perfect. Again, FCS opponent, but a lot of those intangible things that you saw, if those translate to other games, I think this offense is going to be pretty dangerous. I know I talked a lot about Rashada. There's a lot of other stuff we can talk about from this game, but I mean, he kind of stole the show, and rightfully so. He's only the second true freshman in ASU history to start a game, right? And the other guy just got blown out by Mike Norvell. So
All circles back.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, being in the stadium, like Rashada definitely looked good. Yeah, the deep ball to Guillory, just wow,
yeah, that was
such a
yeah.
good throw.
On fourth down,
Yeah,
I wonder what the game looks like if that play goes differently. Like this on both of those plays, that fourth down play and the play before the half, especially given
right,
how the game ended. I mean, just such poise from a true
right.
freshman to step up and do that in
Yeah.
both situations.
First of all, I give Dillingham credit for calling that for going for it in that situation, because it was 4th and 8, but they were on the Southern Utah 47-yard line. So it's kind of
Yeah.
it's kind of that like weird zone where it's a little too long to kick a field goal. You don't want to punt it there, you know? So I like Dillingham going for it in that spot. Guillory did a great job adjusting to the ball. I mean, that is hard to do.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an
And,
over the shoulder ball too, right?
and the cornerback that was on him, like it's not like Guillory just totally cooked him. Like he
No, it
was,
was
in
close. Yeah.
pursuit. So that was a good that was a good play, and then obviously ended the half was really well done. In the first, I mean, the first the first series obviously was really good too. Second series, not quite as good, but I mean, it's 2 5-yard plays, and then they go 3 and out after that. So it's not. I just think like the first half. This was kind of my thought in the first half. Like ASU did like enough in the first half, even though it kind of came in weird ways, right? You have opening drive touchdown, and then like midway through the second quarter, you get a 50-yard touchdown on fourth down, and then you end the touchdown, end the half with a touchdown. So you're up 21-7. It comes in a weird way. It's not just 3 straight touchdowns. But you're up 21-7 at half over an FCS team. I remember thinking at the time, like, okay, like that is a sufficient lead for a halftime. You know what I'm saying? That is a sufficient performance. It wasn't like great. It's not like, you were up 35-0 at half. Like that would have been awesome. That's what every fan wants when they're playing the FCS team. That didn't happen. But, U of A was up 14-3 at half, and they expanded it in the second half.
Yeah.
All that is to say, like, everything looked fine in the first half. It didn't look great. To me, I was thinking like, yeah, this looks like a 6-6 team. That's kind of what I was. They have some playmakers, and Grant Badger wasn't playing in the first half either, so that has to be good. They have some playmakers, they have some guys, but there's some holes in there too. I'll get into the second half now. Look, man, it was bad. Like, I know that, like, if you weren't watching the game and you just see the final score, like, oh, they survived. But like being in the stadium, it was bad. And so obviously the delay clearly had an impact. And I know that I'm going to kind of contradict myself because, like, you shouldn't make excuses about the delay because you should have beat them anyway. But at the same time, the delay clearly had some level of an impact,
Right. And the devil's advocate for that is like Southern Utah had the same delay or whatever.
Yeah.
But imagine. No, go ahead. Sorry.
I do think like weird out of unorthodox, like a 2.5-hour lightning delay or like extreme rain. I do think anything like that, I think that always is a benefit to the worst team because because if things get weird, that's the only way that you really have a chance to win is if weird things happen. So I don't think if the game was just a normal game, ASU probably comes out of the second half, and maybe it doesn't look great and ASU ends up winning like 35-14 or something. But just it really did screw things up. And I saw on Twitter this week that because it was such a long break, like guys were doing homework in between.
Yeah.
So if you're doing homework in between 2 halves of football, like, again, we've played like low-level sports growing up, but you need to be like in the right frame of mind to like go out and compete and like play a sport. And like, you could just tell like that was not there to the level it needed to be with ASU after halftime. And I'm not. Look, if we had lost the game, then this would be a completely different podcast. But because we didn't, like, I'm not gonna overreact. I'm not gonna blame people. Like, it's clearly just a weird circumstance.
Dude, it's one of those things where. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was literally just gonna say, like, real quick. It's one of those things where it doesn't matter how focused you are, how disciplined you are, how rigid your coach is, how locked in you are. If you're playing a team, I think they came into this game as a 35-point favorite, which obviously Southern Utah covered that.
Yeah.
But if you
do not bet on FBS versus FCS games, kids. Do not bet on those games.
If you're an FBS team playing an FCS opponent and you just had to sit through a 2.5-hour weather delay, it's 11:30 when you're about to pick it up and play again. You are 100% on autopilot.
Yeah.
You are doing everything that you can do to not make it painstakingly obvious that you are coasting through this game, regardless of who this is. These are human beings. Like, any human being is going to look at this game, and if you're in that locker room coming out at half and just, I want to go home. I'm so tired of this. Like, I don't know how you don't. I don't know how you don't.
No, I totally agree. And I mean, look, I'm just going through the first possession, 3 plays, 6 yards, punt. They forced Southern Utah to punt. Then 4 plays, 14 yards, punt. Forced Southern Utah to punt. 3 plays, 2 yards, punt. Then Southern Utah does get a touchdown. They got one long play, and then they got a touchdown pass as well. So I'll give them credit. They did do that. ASU responds with a kickoff return. It wasn't Rashad, it was Badger. It looked like it was one of those where he got like taken down, but his knee actually never touched the ground. And so he went and kept going and got all the way to you know what? I can't even see where it is, but got like to the red zone basically. So it was an incredible return. But the problem is ASU had first and goal on the 6, holding call. First and goal on the 16, holding call. First and goal on the 26, incomplete pass. Then second and goal 26, 8-yard run, another 8-yard run. You're able to get the Dario Longhetto 38-yard field goal. And boy, that proved to be a huge field goal because you're up 24-14 just to begin the fourth quarter. You get a punt from Southern Utah, and then you get the ball back midway through the fourth quarter. And this is getting into when it really got squirrely, at least being in the stands of the limited people that were there. This is when it felt like, oh boy, you get one first down, and then you go, you get 2 first downs, and then you have to punt. You're at your own 39-yard line, block punt. And when I first saw it get blocked, I was like, okay, this will get like recovered. This will go out of bounds, whatever. Literally, like bounces right in front of some Southern Utah defender, and like the guy picks it up and just runs to the end zone. Like it was literally the worst possible thing that could have happened. And now all of a sudden it is 24-21, 7, like literally midway through the fourth quarter. And, we can sit here on this show and be like, oh, ASU came out with a win, whatever, it was ugly. But at that moment, I was like, oh my God, like we could very well lose this game because the offense did not look good the whole second half. I just said the one scoring drive they had like negative 20 offensive play or, whatever. They got backed up so far because of penalties. So it wasn't even really like that great of a scoring drive. It's just because of good field position. And when that punt got blocked, man, oh my God, like I was super, super worried. ASU was able to close it out despite not a great offensive series the next possession, but they did have a 5-minute 20 drive to end the game. Rashada found Scatabo on a short pass that he took 26 more yards from the 18 to the 44, and then Badger picked up a 16-yard screen pass. So they did enough. Like they did enough to get by. It like that second half, and I understand. I totally agree with the idea that they got discombobulated or whatever, like screwed up or lost motivation, whatever term you want to throw out there during the, again, extremely long halftime that is totally unprecedented. But like that second half still would have counted. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no, 100%. It still goes down as a loss.
Yeah, exactly. And so in the moment, man, I was like, I was thinking like, I swear to God, I stayed here for 2.5 hours. It's, at that point, 12:30 a.m. on a Thursday night when I have to work the next morning. I was like, I swear to God, like if I stayed up for all this crap, paid $40 for parking at ASU, like they better win. I don't care how ugly it is. I do not want the first game of the Dillingham era to start out with a loss at 1 a.m. to Southern Utah. Thankfully, it did not. And, from a coaching perspective, like, the old saying is, sometimes it's good for a coach to win ugly because then you can, get into the players that next week, but it doesn't actually count as a loss, like, so from that perspective, cool, it's great. But look, I mean, ASU looked like the worst team in the Pac-12. Like I see, if you're looking at a Pac-12 power ranking right now and you see ASU at the bottom, there's nothing anyone can do or say. It's like, yeah, we barely beat an FCS team, even with some weird circumstances. So
Yeah.
that was kind of my. I do want to convey the fact that, like, even though they won and we're gonna forget about this game quickly, there were times in the moment where it was like, holy crap, man, like this is not secure. Like, and granted, it like again, it wasn't a blocked punt, and so like that is like you can't count on a blocked punt every weekend. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you
Yeah.
watch football enough, those are more random than they are like skilled, I guess, especially for the guy for it to bounce in a certain way that the guy picks it up or runs it for a touchdown. But still happened, and yeah, it just got squirrely there, like I said.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how they come out of a half, right? In normal circumstances. Hopefully they get out of the gate strong. There's going to be that continuity this week against Oklahoma State. Obviously, Rashada seems to be getting the nod again. That's what all the reports are going to be. I don't know why he wouldn't.
Yeah, no, he's going to be the starter. Yeah.
Yeah. So I also saw that Drew Pine still was recovering, which almost implies that like if Pine's ready to go, this isn't a done deal, which doesn't make sense to me.
I don't see that. Yeah, I'm
No,
sorry.
no.
Like,
I hope that's not the case. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If you commit to Rashada, unless he comes out and physically cannot move the ball, you have to
right,
work through the growing pains,
right.
right? He's a
Yeah,
freshman. There's going to be some of those. You're not going to a bowl game this year. It doesn't make any sense to pull Rashada and create some sort of like, oh, is it Pine or is it Rashada on a week to week basis?
right.
So I hope it stays Rashada. You need to stick that out. But, and obviously, a 2.5 hour halftime has a lot to say about this. But just looking at the third quarter stats, attempted 6 passes in that third quarter, completed 2 of them for -5 yards.
Oh yeah,
Like, like and it's hard to like take this and transpose it to like what are they
totally.
going to do coming out of the gate next week? But this is all we have to look at, and
Right.
obviously Oklahoma State is going to be a much more formidable opponent. Um, but it's one of those things where the third quarter numbers are not great. They picked up 32 total yards in the third quarter,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah. The third quarter was gross, honestly.
Yeah.
Like just
So and that's to be expected, right? But I mean, halftime in any case can sometimes be like, all right, we're gonna get out of the gate slow. Sometimes teams start slow coming out of that. Right?
yeah.
Is that going to be a story with this team? Who knows? But that's something I'll be paying attention to is what do they do coming out of half this week when they have a normal halftime and not their homework isn't out in the locker room.
Yeah. No, I think it's much more like the second half, like, is you can't be like, oh, this is ASU because in the second half it looked like this. It's like, no, there was a huge delay. But yeah,
Right.
and like part of that, I mean, Rashada looked bad in the second half. Like I
Yeah.
think Dillingham said something about this after the game where it was like he was out of rhythm. And you could just tell like he was off. Um,
Yeah.
and so that I just don't know if that's going to continue. Like ASU will never play as bad as they did in that second half for the rest of the season, I would imagine. Like maybe on the road at Utah, they'll have a terrible first half or something, but I would be really surprised if ASU had another just absolutely terrible half like that. And
Yeah.
then
100%.
yeah, and over like before we end this conversation about Southern Utah because it's whatever, but I did tweet. This is 1:55 a.m. on September 1st, so I did tweet from the Stomp the Bust account, just Stomp the Bust account, uh, just what like my kind of post game thoughts were. First half, solid. 21-7 is a good enough halftime lead despite some inconsistency, kind of what we said earlier. Second half, horrible. Penalties, bad play calling, bad offense, and sloppiness made it too close. C minus game for ASU. Long lightning delay didn't help, but it doesn't explain everything in the second half. So that's kind of where I was at after the game. So
No, I get that. And now that you've had a little bit of time to decompress and um, hopefully put that night out of memory.
Right.
Does it feel any different? All of those takeaways? Do you have some of the same feelings, or is it more like?
Um, well, it is interesting after having watched, a weekend of college football. I will say, second half, no. Like, I don't feel any differently about the second half, honestly. But the first half, um, I think if it was like we kind of mentioned earlier, like if they had a similar type of performance in the second half as the first half, then we're already done talking about this game right now. It's like, oh, ASU beat Southern Utah, whatever. Uh, I do think the first half, like they looked like a lot of okay, college football teams in that half based on, just, looking at the ESPN app throughout Saturday and just watching games and, whatever. Like they looked just kind of like the team, like a 6-6 team. And so just seeing other teams kind of struggle with that or with those teams, or maybe not struggle, but just not look like that super impressive. That kind of made me feel a little bit better, but it's weird because I don't like extrapolate this loss into more, but at the same time, like in the moment, in the second half, in the stadium, like it felt bad. So
Yeah.
uh, it's one of those, but I'll say this, like after watching this first weekend of college football and ASU, I'm going to drop them from 6-6 to 5-7, but it's mostly because of what the other teams in the Pac-12 did. Like, for
Yeah.
one, Colorado looked better, like significantly better than I thought they would be. Cal looked way better than I thought they would be. And that going to Cal is suddenly a much tougher game than I thought it was going to be. And Wazoo looked really dang good, man. Like, that's going to be a tougher win than I expected too. And so those three games that were kind of like toss-up games that like, oh, maybe ASU could go 2-1 in those games. Now I'm like, they're probably going to go 1-2 in those games. So, um, and Fresno State too, not even in the Pac-12. Fresno State looked really good in their win over Purdue. So you have those four like kind of okay teams, and they all look better than I thought they would be. I'm like, oh great, like that makes ASU's season tougher than anything from the Southern Utah game.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Just watching those games over the weekend, like it's unreal how good Colorado looked and
Yeah.
how the stocks are moving in different directions. And it doesn't help that, you had to play on a Thursday night and all of this crazy stuff happened. You're kind of like out of sight, out of mind a little bit. So
Which
I
for
don't know.
ASU that turned out to be a very good thing because
Yeah, no, definitely. I want to see where they're at under normal circumstances this week. Hopefully, normal circumstances. It's hard to make an assessment, but yeah, I agree. They're worse than I expected, but I'm not ready to like put that in stone yet, just because of the circumstances surrounding that game. It was such a weird game. I want to see what they do against Oklahoma State this week, and I think we'll have a better idea of where this team is, um, and go from there. But yeah, you're right. The stock of the Pac-12 skyrocketed over the weekend, so
yeah,
it's dying breath, and it's really making it hurt.
which is just yeah, of course, but yeah. For me, it's not so much that like it's a little bit of what I saw in the second half, and it's probably like 75% of wow, Fresno State, Washington State, Cal, and Colorado, all four looked better than I thought they would be. So that makes it more difficult for ASU. But you mentioned Oklahoma State, and one team who did not look as good as I thought they were going to look was the Oklahoma State Cowboys.
Yeah.
They played three quarterbacks, pretty equal share throughout the game. Garrett Rangel, Alan Bowman, and Gunnar Gundy, who shockingly happens to be the son of Oklahoma State head coach Mike Gundy. Uh, Oklahoma State beat Central Arkansas 27-13. But I think an interesting note from this game is they were up 13-7 entering the third quarter.
Yeah, and it took
Like
that last fourth quarter touchdown
yeah,
to really put them away.
like
It was 20-13 at that point.
yeah, and
In
there
the
was no
fourth
lightning
quarter.
delay. There was no, weird circumstance that affected the game. Like that was a just normal game. And look, I don't follow any Oklahoma State people on Twitter, but I was just kind of just looked and see what the fans were saying, and like people were not like it was a stressful watch of that game, and how could it not be? Like, I mean, I look like ASU's up 21-7 at half, and we don't know what would have happened in a normal second half, but we do know under a normal game with Oklahoma State, they were up 13-7 entering the fourth quarter, and they were up 13-0 at halftime. Like there's an argument to be made that even though Oklahoma State ultimately won the game by more points, they played worse than ASU did because they were. I mean, look, like imagine being an Oklahoma State fan. Imagine being a freshman at Oklahoma State. You're going to your first game playing Central Arkansas, and you're up 13-7 entering the fourth quarter. Like that's stressful, man. I mean, obviously,
Dude.
yeah.
And Oklahoma State blocked 2 field goals in that game. Like it could have been so much closer than it actually was. So I mean that
That's a good point.
27-13 is 27-13, but you add 6 more points to the board. And obviously it's not as simple as just adding 6 points. Game script changes and all of those things. But like you're looking at 2 drives that could have ended in points for Central Arkansas for a team that only scored 20 points until that 17-yard run in the fourth quarter. So that I think Oklahoma State was in a little more danger at home against an FCS opponent than ASU might have been, especially considering the fact they didn't have a 2.5-hour weather delay at halftime.
Right.
I don't know. Oklahoma State's a favorite going into this game, but
and they should be. They should be based on But yeah. Like anyway, continue.
No, 100%. And they have a little more stability with the program. Obviously, their quarterback situation is a revolving door right now, which is never good. I don't know how that'll ever work. Maybe they're treating this as like this was our FCS audition. Let's see who our guy's going to be. But I think you mentioned that they're still going to try to go with a hot hand approach at quarterback.
So
you read something that said that or something?
I typed in Mike Gundy quarterbacks on my Twitter, and this is the Twitter post from the Okallie, which is the student newspaper at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State coach Mike Gundy wasn't any closer to deciding which of his 3 quarterbacks will take the starting job after Saturday's season opener. It's a lot of we don't know who our starting quarterback's going to be, and we might play multiple starting quarterbacks in this game against ASU. And I'll tell you what, I'm glad we have Rashada because I don't think it's look. You can totally do that if you're like Michigan and you're not going to lose the game against a lower tier school, but like Oklahoma State kind of almost lost the game against Central Arkansas. Like there was never like at the end of the game, like sure they weren't actually going to lose it, but they kept it close, and just the quarterback instability at Oklahoma State, like that's huge for ASU because clearly like none of those guys look that good either. That's the other thing,
Yeah, I mean Gunnar Gundy 7 of 9 for 106, and he looked pretty good. 2 rushes for 20 yards. He probably looked the best out of the 3 if we're just looking at the numbers here. And I didn't watch the game. I don't know the context surrounding those numbers, but just at a glance, it looks like he had the best day.
Yeah, I did see some people say like, oh, well, that's because he was in towards like the end of the game, and so therefore UCA is more worn out. But yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if you're just trying to read the tea leaves based on a box score, maybe, and the fact that he has nepotism on his side,
It's
who knows
important.
what that'll do for him? Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at ASU going into a game and actually having, if we're going to give the edge to one of these two teams at the most important position on the field, it has to be ASU at this point, right? Because you don't know who you're comparing Rashada to.
Something's going off on my computer. My bad.
No, that's all right.
Okay.
I was
Anyway,
just saying, like, if you're giving the edge to one of these schools, you have to give it to ASU at quarterback right now.
absolutely.
Yeah. Which, I mean, if you have an edge at the most important position on the field, that bodes well for the chances. It's already projected to be a pretty tight game. So, I mean, at the very least, I think we're going to get a pretty fun one on Saturday.
I agree with that. And also, like, this look, Oklahoma State not having quarterback certainty, like, it's hard for me to think they're going to come in and score 30 points, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, it's really hard for me to, like, I just don't think that's going to happen unless, there's some special teams or a defensive score or something like that. Like, and that gives me hope for ASU because it's not like I'm like, oh, ASU will definitely score 30 points. Like, Oklahoma State's defense, pretty good. And there, that's going to be tough for Rashada. It's going to be the hardest competition he's ever faced. But look, there's a world where ASU only needs to score 3 touchdowns to win this game.
Oh,
There's a
absolutely.
world where 21 points is enough to get the job done against Oklahoma State. And it is funny to me, like, this was more like a little bit before last weekend, but it was kind of, I've heard it this week too. It's like, oh man, ASU is definitely going to lose to Oklahoma State. Because look, Oklahoma State's been a good program under Gundy. Like, everyone has the idea of what Oklahoma State is. They were in a BCS bowl 2 years ago, but like, look, man, I'm just like looking at it. Like, they're only a 3.5-point favorite, and they have quarterback uncertainty. And look, it's not like we played Oklahoma State last year in Stillwater, and that wasn't like a wire-to-wire blowout. Like, that was like an NFL blowout where like a team had to pull away at the end for it to actually be lopsided, And
definitely.
that was a bad ASU team, and that was like a 7-5-ish Oklahoma State team. So like, to round out my thoughts, like, this is not your older brother's Oklahoma State team that, this is not Justin Blackman and
Brandon Weeden.
I was like, who's their old quarterback they had? Yes, Brandon Weeden.
This isn't even the Spencer Sanders.
No, exactly. It's not exactly. Like, dude, they have Alan Bowman. Like, I had to take down the stat, but if you have it up, like, I think it was like 13 of 24
for 80.
Yeah, that's terrible. So if you're an ASU fan, you should hope that Bowman plays, and if Gundy gives him like 2 drives and they both go, and in punts, then that's just 2 drives he's giving you, And so, like, if I were an Oklahoma State fan, like, dealing with, like, if Dillingham was like, if the exact same thing happened, ASU had beaten Southern Utah 27-13, and you had mixed in, let's just say Pine is injured for this, or isn't injured for this. You mix in Rashada, Pine, and Bourget, and none of them play well. I would be very worried heading into a road game,
And I mean, dude, on the other side of the ball, they just gave up 266 yards and 2 touchdowns to Will McElvain.
You don't know who that is?
Yeah, 71 yards on 12 attempts to Mr. Powell, whose first name is Shunderick Powell. I just pulled that up. Then you have receptions of 46 yards, 29 yards. They're susceptible 15. They're susceptible to some chunk plays here. Didn't force a turnover through the air. I think this secondary, based on what I saw from Rashada in that first half, I'm excited for what he might be able to do against this secondary that almost gave up 300 passing yards to Central Arkansas.
Well, and one thing that we didn't mention with Rashada is there were like obviously incomplete passes and like miscommunication and stuff like that, but there weren't like any like, ooh, that ball could have been picked. There weren't like turnover worthy throws. At least noticeable.
he did a great job of putting the ball in places where only his receivers were going to be able
Yes.
to get it.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's just it's a testament to the accuracy and the touch he's putting on these passes. But man, I can't say enough about what I saw on those two deep balls. Again, FCS, I get it, but the touch
Right.
that he put on those passes, especially that one to in the first half, his third pass of the game. I don't have it in front of me,
Football.
but whoever
Yeah.
he threw that pass to, the touch that he put on that ball, receiver made an excellent play on it too. But there wasn't like it wasn't like he had a ton of separation on that. He kind of had to
Right.
put it in the right place for Stovall
Yeah.
for Stovall to go get that 33 yards on that. So I want to see him come out, get that hot start again. I can't imagine or I would hope, based on what we've seen, just looking at this game very briefly and, you know, trying to instill a little bit of confidence in your quarterback that Dillingham might come out throwing the ball like he did against Southern Utah. And let's see if Rashada can replicate that hot start. If he does, I feel very good about ASU's chances in this game.
I agree. And I mean, obviously ASU's defense is going to be huge in this.
Yeah, for sure.
And they will be with Clayton Smith for the whole game too. That's another thing that happened in the first half. Clayton Smith, Oklahoma transfer defensive end, he got out with targeting in the first half. Thankfully, it was the first half, so he'll be fully in this game. You could tell watching him that like he is I don't want to call him like throwing around the phrase difference maker is like too, I don't know, hyperbolic, I guess, but like he had a clear impact when he was on the defensive line, and it kind of opened up more room for everyone else. So I think having him back will be big. Having Badger for a whole game. Remember, we're talking about Rashada's first half. No Badger. Badger was only in
Yeah.
the second half, and obviously he had the great punt return. And he had like a few screen catches in the second half, and so didn't really do much. But having him on the field, that just makes life easier for Guillory. That makes life easier for Stovall. That makes for every wide receiver, it makes it easier for the tight ends. It makes it easier with Badger on the field. And then also another thing in the second half is Jalen Conyers didn't play either. So that could have affected Rashada's, inconsistency there. But
Yeah, I was gonna say I thought he got hurt in the first half. Have you seen anything
yeah,
on that?
so I saw a quote from Dillingham about this week. It was like a shoulder injury, but it wasn't the way he phrased it in his press conference. It was something like he would have played if we had just come out right after half, but basically just because of the long break, they were like, okay, you can just be done for the rest of the game. And
Yeah, because he
who
felt
knows, it
pretty
might have
hard on it.
almost came back to bite ASU, but
Yeah, he felt pretty hard on that after the catch and run. Is that the play he was injured on?
I
Where he
think
took it for
so.
like 40 yards. Yeah.
Done, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, you look at a crop of skill players with, Guillory and Conyers and Messiah Swinson and Stovall and Elijah Badger in that mix too. I
Yep.
mean, I don't know,
Scatterbo,
man.
too.
Scatterbo too out of the backfield.
That's good.
I was really impressed with his balance when he
Dude,
runs and his
yeah.
vision, his ability to kind of just like shift his momentum and hit the gap the second he sees it and do so fluently was
Dude,
really impressive to me.
he is just like just a squat. He's like just a squatty, stocky,
He's a weapon, man.
tough.
He's a
He is
bowling ball.
that tough. Yeah, bowling ball is a good way to describe it, man. That tough to
He's a
bring down.
bowling ball that can go left and right too.
Yep. And
Yeah.
he's good at coming out of the backfield in the passing game too. That was a big and he was good at that at Sacramento State too. So like that's a huge thing for Rashada.
Yeah. I don't know, man. The
Yeah.
secondary doesn't really look like the no-fly zone or anything like that. So I think these guys are gonna have opportunities.
Well, yeah, and I think one thing that we haven't talked about that is going to have an effect on this game is it's going to be hot on Saturday. This is going to be probably, hopefully, the last 110-degree plus day in Arizona this year, hopefully.
Yeah.
And, my phone is giving me 111. So I don't know exactly what that equates to at kickoff. I've seen 102 thrown out there. I've seen 107. It's going to be hot when it is kicked off, and it's going to be at triple digits. Now, Oklahoma State is not like the number one team you would want to play. Like if we were playing like a Big Ten team or something, we would win this game just because of how freaking hot it is, and they wouldn't. It would be tough for them to replicate that. Like it just would. Oklahoma State, not quite as much. Like it is hot in Oklahoma, but I was looking at the weather in Stillwater this week, and it's in the 90s. Could be a factor. Could be a factor.
Yeah.
If it's that
No, I
hot.
mean, I think it's always a factor, especially like when you're playing at night and it's still 100 degrees. I
Yeah,
think that messes with you a little bit. And I mean, we've seen it. There's been some wild stuff that happens and when ASU hosts some of these teams. So
that is
not
true.
that, Oklahoma State would be a colossal upset or anything like that, but I mean, given the state of this team right now, I would not be shocked if ASU's 2-0 come Saturday. Um, but again, I wouldn't be shocked if they were 1-1. I'm just going off of what I saw from Rashada in that limited sample, and what I did would bode well in this game, I would think.
Yeah, totally. So it should be an interesting game. It's not going to be the best game of the weekend. There's a lot of better games out there for that. Yeah, you have anything more to add on this matchup before we kind of?
Not necessarily. I'm excited for I kind of tentatively said, yeah, I think the Colorado game is going to be one that I go to. Now I'm just hoping I don't get priced out of it. So after what Travis Hunter,
Yeah.
Shador Sanders, and Dion did, I mean, I don't know. I'm excited to see them play. I would not be shocked that I can't believe they're only a 2.5 point favorite against Nebraska after what Nebraska just did against Minnesota. That seems like free money, but who knows? That could
The
be a
one
rat.
thing I
That
would
could be
say
a
about
rat line.
Colorado, and I'm not like I look, I like Dion. Like I think it's great. Like I know there are some ASU fans that don't like Dion because in the division. I get that. But like clearly it's worked to a point. Like the fact that they even beat TCU, like you could like it's already worked in my opinion.
Yeah.
That all said, their defense is not good. Like it's just
No.
not good. And
No,
so
I agree.
that I think that's kind of why the line is why it is.
Yeah.
So that
But my thing is Nebraska's offense didn't really show too much. So like even
no,
against that level of defense, where like I mean, Travis Hunter plays defense. He almost
no, I
had
get
2 picks in
it.
that game.
No, I get it. I'm just saying like TCU had no issue going up and down the field. And to
No,
Colorado's
100%.
credit, it had no issue going up the field as well. So like maybe I don't know how I definitely want to watch that game, but
No, definitely. It scares me because it feels like a rat line. One of those things where you're just like,
yeah, exactly. I am not betting that game at all. Like I'm staying
I've
away.
already got Colorado 2.5 on it. I'm like, I'm not gonna miss that. The
I feel
juice was already up at -122, so I don't know how much
no.
longer that's gonna be at 2.5. So I had to pounce.
I mean, they could win. I'm
I
not
mean,
until
by
they
a
have some
field
more.
goal,
I
that's
just
all they
you
need.
never know. Like you just never know. Like the thing is with like now we're analyzing the Colorado game, but like two of those picks were like at or near the end zone, which is great. Like that's awesome. But that also shows that they were able to get that far. So
No, that's a great point. TCU left a lot
yeah.
on the field, but TCU isn't, or Nebraska isn't TCU.
No, they're not. But again, it's like Colton, remember this was our junior year. This was the Texas Notre Dame game that was like awesome. It was at Texas and like it ended with like a walk-off touchdown. You'll remember this game. Like
I don't think I remember this game.
um
Thank
it
you.
was two okay, well basically my point with this is like at the time it was two top 10 teams, but by the end of the season they were both like one went 4-8 and the other went 5-7. So
Hold on, I'm gonna look this up.
with
Texas.
these
Keep
like
talking.
it'd be 2016. You'll remember this game because we bet on it. We had a bet with each other, and I think you won. But my point with Colorado in that sense is like we don't know how good TCU is going to be, like, because like TCU lost so many people to the draft. They were a weird type of team to get to the national championship anyway. Like they didn't profile as a national championship team, even though they won the games to get there. Like they deserved to be there, but they weren't like clearly Ohio State was the second best team last year. And so we don't know how good TCU is going to be this year. And it's the same thing goes with Colorado. But wrapping that all up, like I still give a lot of credit to Dion and Colorado because like that was a big win.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I also there are some ASU fans like, oh, we should have hired Dion. It's like, well, yes, it would have been great if we had hired Dion. Like I'm not opposed to that, but Michael Crow was not going to hire Dion, and so if you want to get mad, like blame Michael Crow for that, I don't know, like, and also part of the calculus in hiring Kenny is like it's going to take like, look, we have a bowl ban this year, so Dion may not have come at all, and he like Dillingham. You hire a young coach with the idea that he's going to grow into it, and so anyway, but
definitely. Former Eagle Josh Adams played in this game. Very cool. Yeah, we can end
but you
on
remember that game, like how it was yeah.
Dude, I don't know why I don't. Like, I truly have no recollection of this game.
Yeah. One last kind of news item. Well, actually two. We mentioned how Jake Smith didn't get his eligibility approved. Safety Xavier Alford is in the same situation. Dillingham said, quote, "It's ridiculous in my opinion. I just don't understand it." Ditto. So that sucks for Mr. Alford. And then another piece of news is ASU men's basketball will take on Mississippi State in Chicago as part of the Barstool Sports Invitational. And I think this game is going to be broadcast online, and I think Big Cat and
There's an
Dave
app.
Portnoy
I
are going
watched
to be
it last year. If I watched it last year, if you download the Barstool app, you can watch it on like the Fire Stick and stuff or whatever you have. But yeah, Big Cat and Portnoy announced the game, and they just like lose their minds the entire time over the bets that they have. That was like the most fun I've had watching a basketball game, watching it with the nuances of like, don't dribble this out, like that sort of thing. When you need 6 points left and it's like 50 seconds on the clock, how many more possessions are you going to get? All of that stuff. It was really fun. So that'll be a fun watch with ASU in the mix too. That'll be. I had a good time watching it. I thought it was a good change of pace from the classic announcer, whatever that we get. But announcers with a knowledge of gambling is always fun.
Right. No, I think it's good exposure, for sure. And just to have those guys talking about you, it's not a big deal to me, but maybe two-way potential recruit it is. I don't know. And you're playing Mississippi State. Like they're a similar type of program as ASU, like a tournament-ish program, and good matchup. I'm excited. And it's just I do like this about Hurley. Like again, people complain about him. I have shared my thoughts on that, but I like that he goes into these like big events, or large events. I don't know if it's like a big event, but like for ASU basketball's like profile, they go into a lot of tournaments and like high profile tournaments too. So I like that. And so that's a good thing that Hurley does.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't wait to watch it.
All right. Well, with that, let's just end with some score predictions. Colton, what do you got? Oklahoma State, ASU.
Ooh, I like your projection of a lower scoring game. I think you were pretty spot on with that. I think currently ASU is listed as a 3.5 point dog.
Yeah. Probably depends on which place you go, but yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard right now just because, week one in college football, especially for Division I teams playing FCS opponents, is so often used as like a tune up or whatever. You don't know what you're going to see from Oklahoma State. I'm going to go based off of everything that I've said. I'm going to go a little optimistic here. I think Rashada comes out, gets off to a hot start. I think ASU scores first in this game. I think they get out to an early lead. I think it's tied at one point, and Rashada orchestrates a game-winning drive to get them in field goal range. I'm going 24-21.
Oh my gosh. That was so close to the score I have in my head. So the score I have in my head is 24-20 ASU. I think it'll be more of a game where like ASU kind of has to hold on to win.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, I'll go ASU 24-20 Oklahoma State over Oklahoma
I like
State.
that too.
That's all from us this edition. Thank you for tuning in. Please like and subscribe, rate and review on your podcast app of choice. And as always, go Devils.